Hello everybody and welcome to this video from Biggerplate.com. I'm delighted to welcome actually back for about the third time we've attempted this, Michael Hollauf from Meister, who's joining me today to just have a little bit of a chat about the past, the present, the future of Meister and MindMeister, the product, which is what most people who know Biggerplate will know MindMeister, I suspect. So Michael, thank you very much for joining me. I was saying to you before the call, it makes me feel a bit better when somebody who runs a successful technology company also struggles with technology. So thank you for making me sort of feel a bit better about myself. That's great. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me. I think you were in Zagreb earlier this week, freezing your hands off, I think you said. Was that a good trip?
Yeah. It was a good trip, yeah. Cold, quite cold. When you go to Croatia, you usually expect, the summer, sand, beach.
Yeah, blue skies and nice sea, yeah.
Nice Christmas market stuff. Very nice Christmas market.
Is that what you went for? Just a bit of Christmas shopping? Perfect, Michael. So there's a lot to kind of try and cover in a sort of relatively short time with you. Obviously, you and I have known each other for a very long time now, and we've had the pleasure of working with MindMeister for many, many years. I thought I'd be really on brand today and even drink my water out of my Meister mug, So,
perfect. Then
you've got a different. See, I've got to collect the whole set, I think, over time.
Yeah, me too. But yellow and orange are also my favorite colors.
Well, there you go. So maybe for those of watching who are not familiar with MindMeister, maybe you could just go a little bit sort of back in time. I really enjoy talking about this era of the internet when you started MindMeister and I started Biggerplate, because the internet and technology was so different to what it is now. It's kind of easy to forget. Like when I started Biggerplate, Facebook was still for university students only, which is kind of a strange thing to think about now. But maybe you could just give us a little bit of the kind of the MindMeister backstory, if you will, from sort of where did it start? What was the prompt? Why mind mapping software?
Yes, absolutely. Super happy to. We have to be careful, the two of us, when we start talking about the past, that we don't start sounding like the Muppet Show guys, all that.
Actually, I take that as a compliment. If somebody says I sound like someone from the Muppet Show, that's a positive for me. That's an improvement, actually.
Yeah, but no, I'm with you. I also think they were great days, when I started out, because you can see how much it has changed, and how back then, technology-wise, and from everything, this huge new industry has grown that is now probably the biggest industry in the world, one of the biggest ones for sure. And the word SaaS, for example, is I always think about software as a service, is what we were all doing, didn't exist back then. I think it was like 2010 or so that it came about first. So yeah, basically taking us back to, there would be the year 2006, 2007 would be sort of where I would say that MindMeister started. The first spark sort of came. And it started out of basically working with mind maps in our previous jobs. Till, my co-founder Till and myself were consultants at a software company as well. I was in London, Till was in New York, or Munich. We were together actually as well. So kind of a bit of a journey. And we used mind maps for working with clients, really. Yeah, it's a great tool for collaboration, for structuring a project, and everyone can, add their topics and so on to it. So we loved that. Basically had full day workshops. We would make a mind map, and then usually I'd send it to the client afterwards. And the problem there was, the only way I could send it was either as an original source file, which then would have required them to have the software for it, which cost 350 euros or something like that, quite expensive. And or I would send a PDF or just a screenshot image, something which is sort of a dead document. They can't do anything with it. They can't extend it or anything. So there was a problem. And at the same time, also the first browser-based software was released. And it's actually Google who acquired a company called Writely back then and turned that into Google Docs. What is now Google Docs was actually an acquisition. And that allowed you to write documents in a browser collaboratively. Like two people could be at the same time in the document. You'd see who was there, and you could, edit the same document at the same time without any software that you needed to install from anywhere, any browser, internet cafe. Is fantastic, right? And it was, still a bit clunky, slow with the browsers back then, but it worked. And we thought, wow, cool, let's try that for mind maps. Well, it should be possible to draw a mind map in a browser and make it somehow editable. And we tried that. started a small outsourcing company back then, and we had some developers there that when they weren't working on client projects, they had time, and we tried out some technological stuff, and it worked really well. Like, it was surprisingly possible to draw a mind map. Technically, it was still very hard to sort of draw the lines between the topics. We had to have 1 pixel diffs, like thousands of 1 pixel diffs to draw one line. Right? There was no SVG, vector graphics, nothing like that in browsers. So that was cool. And basically the prototype worked so well that we thought, okay, why not, show this to people? We'll put up a website and try and get some users on it. So we launched that in February 2007. The first time public, like a private beta. We invited about 200 people, gave all of them 10 invitations, that sort of FOMO thing that some people still do today. Worked so well that a week later we had 10,000 people on it or something like that. And the decision to then really concentrate on that product and let the outsourcing business sort of slowly go was a very quick one, really.
Right.
One I haven't looked back on.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting. I mean, 10,000 in 2 weeks, I would have been delighted with that. It took us about a year or two to get, I think, to 10,000 members on Biggerplate. But I'm interested, 10,000 in 2 weeks, I guess in sort of that 2007 sort of time, you'd look at that and go, okay, that's interesting. But those were 10,000 people using it for free, or were they paying something?
Unfortunately, for free.
For free, right? So
very delighted.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a really good start. So, but my question, I guess, is: so if you kind of fast forward a little bit, and I guess you then start to introduce sort of paid options and things. When was kind of the moment when yourself and Till sort of looked at it, and you obviously made the decision to wind down the outsourcing company and focus on the mind mapping product? When was the kind of point where you really started to feel like, okay, we're really onto something here that is kind of ready to go further? Because the 10,000 users for free, I'm guessing that was a good early signal, but you probably needed another few signals along the early days to say, yeah, we're not going totally crazy. There's something here that people will pay for as well as use. When did those signals start to appear?
Yes. It's hard to remember exactly when we made the decision, but the signals were quite early. Like, I remember one signal, I think we launched in February, and sort of in the second week of March, we had our first payment, because we had launched the payment gateway already, right, in the first version, but we hadn't got any paid features. So all the features were free because it was private beta, but there was a button to upgrade, and some people clicked it, like, without having any of it. They thought, that's cool software, I want to pay, I want to support it. And no paywall, like now, all those growth gurus say, it's all about paywalls, you have to find the right moment. It also works if people really like the software and want to support you. Yeah. I don't think it would work at scale, probably, but yeah.
Yeah, it was always an interesting challenge for us. Biggerplate's been online since 2008, and I think we only sort of really actually figured out how to make any sort of business model. We only kind of figured that out, and we're still working on it. But it took us the best part of 10 years to go, okay, what's the commercial model underneath a free mind map library? What is somebody paying for that? And we launched Biggerplate without a single thing that people could actually pay for. So it took us a long time. But one of the ideas that was always sort of there, and maybe even still is just this idea, as you say, of just giving people the option to kind of contribute some money. And actually, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that model sort of almost having a resurgence, this idea of kind of tipping on websites and things like this, kind of, or contributing, or buy me a coffee, these kind of things that you see on websites now. So maybe I should be adding that onto Biggerplate as well as a little feature.
A/B test, why not?
Yeah, so A/B test along with many others. So it's been a sort of a long kind of journey then from 2007 to wherever we are now. And what are sort of some of the, if we just cover the past in summary, what are some of the kind of critical moments or highlights or sort of real breakthrough moments that you think you guys had? Because even in the time that we've been working with you, the company has grown and expanded and sort of accelerated almost every year. It's fantastic. But if you look at that journey from 2007 to sort of relatively recently, what would some of those kind of real entrepreneur founder kind of highlights be for you?
Very good question. I think we'd talk about launching additional products or so a little later, but one, when you just said that now, one that came to mind was At some point, we made a conscious decision in our heads about growth. And I think it must have been about 7-8 years ago. Basically, until then, what happens is, you launch a company, you start having your first payments, money comes in the beginning, nowhere near what can sustain 2 people's salaries, or 3 or 4. We had some developers as well already then. We had that point then actually in 2008, that's maybe a little part of the story, where we did decide, we took a small angel investment. What was it? It was 600K back then. The only investment we had up until the middle of this year then, to basically be able to let go of the project outsourcing business quicker. Because we kept doing projects on the side to earn the money, to cross fund it. But at some point, it's tough, it's a distraction. We got a good valuation, got some people we knew in, and did that. So there was one growth thing. And then had to break even like sort of a half year later. Break even when the company became profitable. We could start paying salaries. And from then on, it had always been profitable. And then it's profitable, and you basically have 2 founders, and you kind of have the decision, okay, how much do we reinvest in the business? How much do we force growth? How much do we kind of, I don't know, want to live off the business, so to speak? Yeah. And we kind of like, okay, living off business, all great, but it's not really exciting. It's not really fun. And if before you make that conscious decision, you tend to be very cautious with hiring, with spending money, and so on. And then at some point you realize, okay, but also the people who are here, they want to have fun, they want to see growth, they want to experience something, and you yourself want it. And we kind of said, okay, I'm not going to use a swear word here, but we say, okay, we spend the money now, we grow, everything the company takes in, we take in. We don't have any big needs. Our needs are taken care of. Rent is paid. We have a car each. We don't need more. Yeah. And we want to have fun and want to grow this business and see where it can go. And at that point, the company just grew much faster, because we hired. The hiring helps you make so much more, find the right people. We started spending money in marketing. We started hiring this consulting company, who again then even more brought us to spend and showed us how important it is to grow the business. And that was, I think, a cool point, because if I look at the employee charts, we were around 7-8 people then, and then kind of were like, I don't know, within a year and a half up to 50-60 or something.
And I just want to zone in on a couple of things there that I think are connected. And again, in my working with you guys now for quite some time, I think you kind of hit on a couple of notes there that are kind of interesting to me. We are sort of some way away, obviously, from hiring 50-60 people, but I'm always kind of looking at what other people have done in creating businesses. And I think one of the things that's always struck me with MindMeister from sort of day one was, you talk about sort of yourself until deciding, okay, we want to have fun, we want this to be energetic kind of business. You seem to be able to just attract these people. MindMeister, my experience of working with you guys, has always had this kind of really good, kind of sharp, energetic, fun people. So how do you kind of, if you fast forward to today, how do you kind of, how have you done that? How have you managed to attract a certain type? Is that because you until have let go of some of the more cautious things and said, we want to focus on the right people with the right kind of ethos above all else? How do you think you've managed it? Because and how are you continuing to manage it now that you are up to kind of 50-60 people? Is that becoming harder to maintain that kind of close, fun team that you've always had, or how are you finding that?
Yeah, very good question. So for the initial part, how did we find them? I think the only explanation I have is probably pure luck, pure good chance, right? Got some really cool people from the outsourcing company in Romania here to Vienna, much younger than Till and me. We've always been the oldest in the company, more energetic than Till and me, probably. And that, so I mean, some of them, Rafaela, she's with us to this day. It's amazing, and a couple of other great people. So that was luck. Then you have some cool people, they know others, they bring in. Vienna was a really good ground for hiring them, because there weren't many startups. Now it's also become a bit of a startup hub, which is good, but there weren't that many companies that could offer cooler vibe, So that was great. It gets much harder, obviously, at scale. Yeah, and when especially you can't really, able to personally be in every interview. At the moment, we're growing by 13, 14, 15 people a month. That was the last few months. We had that many. We're up to 130 now, I think.
Wow.
So that's much tougher, but we luckily have now a great people department who know the values of the company, the ethos of the company, who know the kind of people that are here and what we want in the new people, and have a really good feeling of who would fit in the company.
Yeah. And I suppose you've got some of these sort of longer standing team members like Rafaela who sort of do sort of represent that kind of cultural vibe that you kind of want in the company. So I guess that feeds into this. So let's just bring ourselves then up to sort of MindMeister today, because you've sort of led us there with up to 130. I didn't realize you got up to that many. So interesting also the time that you've had this kind of pace of growth is obviously we're still in varying stages of sort of pandemic lockdowns and remote working, all that sort of stuff. So in terms of sort of the business growth in people terms, have you been doing all of this hiring sort of remotely? Where is, for those who don't know, where are the sort of the MindMeister offices? How is your kind of team comprised? Is it a mix of remote and sort of office space? How have you kind of set yourselves up? And has the last couple of years sort of changed your thinking in terms of how you're setting up as a company?
Sure. We haven't mentioned it, of course. Yeah. So it has changed a bit. So up to now, we probably had, up to a couple of years ago, we had everyone in Vienna. Yeah. Then I think already 5, 6, 7 years ago, we opened an office in Seattle. Actually, it was in San Francisco first, so first US office, and that's now in Seattle. We have right now 6, 7 people there. And we have a small office in Munich where Till pretty much is. And the last one we're about to open now is one in Berlin, like a small office in Berlin. We just hired a CCO, and he's going to be based out of Berlin and going to build a small team there. But basically, as of now, of the 130 people, about 120 are still here in Vienna. And we have that smaller Seattle office, and we have a few remote people now. We only just started really hiring fully remote people. At the moment, the plan for most of them is still to join us in Vienna. But that's mainly down to really logistics, like legal problems, actually, of hiring people in different countries. It's really tough. We're using a service for that now. There are lots of services popping up because obviously companies have the problem. And then to get them to Vienna, you need a thing like, it's called a red, white, red card. The Austrian flag is red, white, red.
Yeah,
so
right.
The red, white, red card. That's basically a specific permit to join the EU, to join Austria for workers that, industries that needs highly skilled workers, and that we don't have enough for. And that process, I've been saying it in many interviews, is a pain in the ass. I'm hoping that some people from the Austrian government are watching. And
I'll forward this on, shall I?
Yeah, forward this. A pain in the neck, I should say, rather. And that's that's what we're doing. But basically, still, most of the people are actually in Vienna, but unfortunately, in this lockdown, that we're again in working from home mostly.
Yeah, and so let's sort of use that as a bit of a transition, and we talk about the people side of Meister, as the company is known now. What about the product side? So that's kind of almost a prompt for you and I to reconnect for another one of these calls. Is a very exciting and really quite sort of fundamental makeover, if you like, of the MindMeister product, which is obviously what Biggerplate members will know in terms of mind mapping. So I'd also then just like to talk a little bit later about the other products that are now sort of accompanying it. You've got Meister Task and Meister Notes. So I'm kind of interested to see or get your sort of inputs and insights into kind of how you see the set. But if we first of all just look at MindMeister, it looks fantastic. I've done a video this week using it, and in all its sort of, it's just a much more sort of, strange to say it, but it's so much more visually appealing, which is kind of an interesting thing to say for a mind mapping tool that's been on the market for so long. But I'm kind of interested to know what was the point at which yourself and Till and your sort of leadership team said, right, we've got to do this. We've got to do a a real sort of rebuild from, I don't know if it's from scratch, but it seems like it's a pretty fundamental starting again. What's the rationale? Why now? Why take on that challenge when you've also got this issue of people growth and other products? Why sort of double down on MindMeister now?
Yes, very good question. And it's been a long discussion inside the company, because anyone who's ever done a rewrite of a product, maybe not anyone, but many people will tell you, don't do it. Like I've been involved in rewrites in the previous company where Till and I worked, and I must say none of them worked. Right. And then basically when we took on the idea of, after, what was it, 11, 12 years of rewriting MindMeister from the ground up, it was a big discussion, and those demons from the past were in our heads. And is it going to be one of those rewrites that basically just fails? But no, we can do it. There were many reasons. Like one big reason was, it's been a product we built in 2007. We've built it on technology that was around then. We obviously updated the technology, but there were still bits of libraries and parts in there that hadn't been supported for a long time, prototype library and so on, that were still in there somewhere and used, and kind of gives you a queasy feeling to have software. That was one bit. Second one was from also a technological point we had with the other two products, with Meister Task and especially Meister Note. We introduced a completely new tech stack based on React and Redux. If you're sort of in the JavaScript world, you know that that's kind of really the state-of-the-art software for web applications today. It really uses super fast, scalable, uses real-time technology. It's actually by Facebook. We mentioned Facebook at the beginning. Facebook invented React, and pretty much anything out there modern you see uses that framework. So our new tech stack for the other two products was built on that. Just MindMeister was in a much older one. There was a second technological reason. We wanted to bring it on the same tech stack, be able to have the same shared components with it, same look and feel, same, all of that. Third one was, over the years, obviously, of getting customer feedback for 10, 12 years on features, on MindMeister, on UI, UX. We had so many things we wanted to do. New features that we wanted to bring that we could have probably added somehow to the old MindMeister, but then it becomes more and more difficult to add new things if they're not built in from the beginning. Kind of, you run the danger of having sort of a Frankenstein kind of product at some point. And we kind of really wanted to implement it more. Wanted to give the users the things they were looking for, like positioning of nodes on lower levels, edit, formatting inside nodes, all kinds of things. And third one was, that's three already. The fourth one was probably scalability performance. Yeah, we kind of saw with the new technology, you can get much, much faster. And the fifth one you mentioned was appealing, visual appeal. With mind maps, it also become much more colorful. It become much easier to do, like, differently colored lines, sticker lines, and so on. We had so many designs for beautiful new themes that would have been very hard to implement the old one. And we are very visual company. We put a lot of focus on design. It's what we think is one of our USPs. We talked about the colors of the mugs in the beginning. So, strong colors, beautiful content. Basically make it easy for people to create beautiful content. Even if you're not a designer yourself, give them a tool set, themes, presets that makes the content stand out, is one of our tenets of building products. And I hope we achieved that in Panda in version 1, and what's still to come, because it's Panda.
That's kind of what I was interested to get a perspective from you. So I think from that, the aesthetics, the visuals perspective, I think it's a real leap and almost quite unexpected, because, as I say, you've been kind of doing this for a long time. Then you suddenly go, wow, actually, this is really striking. They are really kind of striking visuals now. Even creating the video I did this week, it looks so much better when it's presenting than it did before. Even though it's the same content, it just looks way better. It makes me look much better as a user of the software. So that's you've helped to use.
We want to make you look good.
Yeah, thank you. I need all the help I can get, actually. So you're talking about this as MindMeister, sort of new MindMeister version 1. what else might people sort of be looking forward to over the next kind of year or two without giving the game away? What are sort of some of the areas, if you like, of kind of development of the product beyond where it is now?
Very interesting question as well, because we have our year-end discussions right now, and we're planning the next year, planning our goals for the next year right now. We did that last week, and put down some goals for next year. So there, the immediate goal is something. I have to ask, when will this video go live?
Oh, right. Almost immediately. So I can
Really?
put it up probably even today if we needed to.
Okay. And I can't give too much about the company.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because we're only presenting them for their own company, you know.
Good plan. Yeah. Choose your words carefully.
Choose your words carefully. But yeah, basically, we're going to really double down on existing products and make them really work, make them well integrated together, make them the experience as smooth as possible. We're getting feedback on the UI, UX of the new MindMeister right now. We've just launched Meister Node in a really great version, but there's still so much potential for that product. Meister Task, as is our second product, is really popular in so many regions around the world, and we still can go so much deeper there. So the immediate plan is to really mature all the products, deepen functionality, make them perfect for the use cases that they cover, integrate them well together.
Yeah.
And then look at additional fields of functionality.
Yeah. And so that sort of leads us on nicely to this sort of product suite, which I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect some of the MindMeister users may not even sort of be aware of the other products that are now in the set. And so you've got Meister Task was the next product, and that, as you say, has been around for quite a few years now, but not
6-7 years as well.
Yeah, wow, really? God, that's gone quick. So 6-7 years of Meister Task, which again, people who I know who use it seem to really love it. And again, I think that was one of the things that actually made the visual aspects of old MindMeister stand out a little bit, was compared to Meister Task. Meister Task was that really kind of bright, vibrant, kind of Meister identity. And actually it was only when I saw Meister Task that you started to look at MindMeister, the old one, and go, it's not quite as striking. So that's kind of interesting what you're talking about there. And then so Meister Task is sort of integrated to a degree with MindMeister. You can sort of assign tasks from within your mind map, and they go over into this more sort of kind of Kanban board task management system. And that seems to really work well. Now, what about Meister Note? That's the newest product. I think that was sort of this year or last year sort of launch. It was pretty new, isn't it?
September this year.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I've slightly lost track of time over the last 2 years. I really don't know what's happened. So what was the thinking behind Meister Note? That's maybe for some people a less obvious sort of addition to the set than the task. So what was the sort of the rationale for Meister Note, and does that kind of fit in with the other products? Do they talk to each other at the moment, or is that sort of still to come? What's the Meister Note product, first of all? What does it do? What's it going to help me with?
Yes. So Meister Note is your team's brain, and it's a team documentation, collaborative writing, knowledge management platform. I use the word knowledge management because that was actually how we started out in the first company, Tim and I. And it's come back. The term knowledge management was back then, was like in the early 2000s, really popular. And now it's coming back. It's coming back because people realize how important it is, especially in this age with the pandemic, lockdowns, remote working, how important it is to externalize knowledge. To not have knowledge in heads, but to externalize it, which kind of at this stage still means writing it down in many cases. Yeah, to bring it down, to document it in a super easy, super convenient, collaborative way. That when you work in a project, you have a meeting, and anything you do, you have an easy way of externalizing knowledge, and for others to consume it then whenever they want, to consume it asynchronously at their own pace. You know, videos and things like that work for some applications and areas, but they don't usually work for onboarding someone onto a company, like hiring, you know, things like that. And that's what we're trying to do with Meister Note. And it was a really good fit in the rest of the suite, because we currently basically in the Meister suite, we see sort of Meister task as the central hub. That's the hub where you carry out your daily work. You assign your tasks, you work in the tasks, you comment, you collaborate, you move them through the Kanban process. And the two feeders into that central hub are on the one side MindMeister, where you bring in your sort of more visual documents, your brainstorming, meetings, your structuring, and feed that into tasks. And the other one is the more linear content, the written content, notes, documents, structures of documentation. We have our company handbook in there. We have loads on every meeting, right. Notes, everything in there. And those are sort of two feeders. And the central hub is Meister task. So the integrations are there. We're improving them. We're adding better integrations between our own products as well as to external products all the time. So that's a big direction as well for us. Yeah. And yeah, the idea is to have all your team's collaborative work you can do in the Meister suite.
It's really interesting to hear you kind of describe it actually now in terms of how you see the suite fitting together, because I wouldn't have thought of it that way around, but it makes a lot of sense, because I suppose probably my bias towards obviously mind mapping software makes mind mapping software the center of the universe, but actually one of the things we talk about a lot with our clients and with our members on Biggerplate is a mind map is not always the right tool or technique or document type. Sometimes you need to switch out of your mind map into something else, like a task management tool or a writing tool. And yeah, I would have often put the mind map sort of at the front end for the thinking that's a bit unstructured and a bit messy, and then sort of been saying, right now, switch into your thing. So I absolutely get that idea of kind of Meister task as the sort of being fed by these other areas. It's very interesting. And I also think as you said, the knowledge management piece and what Meister Note is trying to sort of, or tapping into is, you're right. There's definitely been a sort of surge over the last few years of these kind of tools. We've used a couple of different ones. We've had several sort of quite abortive attempts at Biggerplate to kind of put all of our stuff into what you could call a knowledge base. Which is company handbook, call it what you will, but a lot of the Biggerplate knowledge is basically in mine and Graham's heads, and that's not very useful for anybody else to kind of leverage who comes to work here. So there's something in that trend that you're tapping into, and I just can't help but think it's just the broader trend of people feeling a bit overwhelmed with information and generally not quite knowing what to do with it or how to do it. So that combination that you're now offering of the Meister Note organization and the mind mapping through MindMeister organization to kind of make it all a bit more tidy, and then Meister task being a what do you do next sort of piece. Right, you've got clear on the information. Now what? That's I guess where you're sort of saying, right, now push it into some tasks and some actions.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really weird because Meister Note, I myself was surprised on how quick the uptake just internally has been. It's been probably the quickest update now. I would say that pretty much everyone in the company uses Meister Note on a daily basis now. Really, we use it all the time. We then create tasks out of it. We document so much more now. And I think we've become a much better organization, a much more consistent, much more aligned organization because of it. Because it's all written down as a strategy document, everyone has access to it, everyone can comment, add to it. It's there, black on white or white on black, depending on your dark theme or white theme, and also things like messaging. The bigger corporations, that's also something we've had to learn over the past few years. It becomes much more important how you communicate to the whole organization. That, for example, your communication is consistent. The leadership team, for example, that everyone says the same things, that there's no doubt on, but he said that and they said that. That wasn't the problem with 20, 25 people or 5 people or whatever. But now it becomes important. And also there on messaging, writing down what the messaging is, what the core communication is so useful because everyone can see it, almost read it, be aligned. It's awesome. Even for smaller users, I think you should try it because it'll pay back later on. I've kind
of seen the benefits of that theory a few times, but what we've kind of struggled with, I think, which is what you're talking about in terms of that internal uptake, is kind of making it a habit.
Yeah.
So, I will every couple of years go, we need to do this. And there's a sort of burst of primarily my energy, just writing down everything I know about Biggerplate in some sort of knowledge-based form, but I don't make it a regular habit. So it means it's out of date relatively quickly. It's got big gaps that I can't be bothered to fill in, or these kind of things. And I think what, we talk about this a lot with mind mapping software. Until it becomes kind of a habit, you're never going to sort of realize the full benefits of it. You kind of need to build it into your sort of weekly or even your daily sort of activities in order for it to really kind of start to shape them and make them better. So I think Meister Note maybe we'll be setting that as one of our own internal challenges for the new year.
On the habit moment, it's super interesting because people talk a lot about the habit moment, their high effect and all that, and how do you get people to do it? We have, I think, in the last years found our philosophy on that, and basically Meister Note, we can really see that it seems to work. And for us, creating a habit to document your stuff is about really making it a fun and satisfying experience to write. So we really try, and in the editor, again, with design, fonts, sizing, and also the feel of how the editor feels when you enter text, when you press return. We want to make it as satisfying as possible to create that text, to create that content that looks beautiful, then that you just want to do it all the time again. That you'll say, okay, I'm here now, I'll make a note, because you already know it's going to be beautiful, it's great, and it's nice to write in the thing. Yeah. That sounds kind of stupid, but
it's less of a chore. It's less of a sort of, I've got to do this. I think that's right. And interestingly, as you talk, I think that's my sense, having used the new version of MindMeister. Actually, I think that's what's, and I never sort of knew that I needed that. I was quite happy with old MindMeister. It's worked really well for us for many years, and our clients and people also really enjoy it. But it's when I kind of got the new version, and I wouldn't have actually been able to articulate it particularly well, but it does just feel quite satisfying. It's just kind of nice, these little design changes that, as I said earlier, makes my stuff look better than it actually is. That's a real benefit to me. So I think there's a really interesting kind of set of things there. And you talk about kind of this trend, for example, of knowledge management as one of the things that you've kind of tapped into, either deliberately or just coincidentally. So if I just, with the sort of short amount of time we've got left, Michael, if I just now asked you to fast forward a little bit or look forward, Meister, yourselves, you took an investment, as you said, only your second round of investment in all these years. That was earlier this year. That was, I think, $52 million, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in terms of what you're able, of course, to share, what's your sort of forward view? What is that investment, for example, going into? Where does that sort of, what opportunities do you see that kind of opening up for you guys as a team and for yourselves? Until, what were you sort of looking at, saying, here's why we need to get some funds in, here's what we want to go after next? And if I could just broaden it out even a little bit further than that, you talk about sort of knowledge management as one of these trends that's come back. What are some of the other trends that you, as the founder, are just kind of keeping your eye on, and sort of on your radar for maybe the next few years, that you think may affect the company? We know the pandemic and remote working has kind of created a trend to be a bit more tuned into, but could you give us a little bit of that sort of forward view? A really great investment. Where is that going to take you? And what are the things that are sort of on your founder's radar for sort of potential impacts or opportunities?
Good question. Yeah. So on the first one, the joint vision that we have with an investor, it's a European investor. It's from Scandinavia, a company called Verdane. And what we both said, we see this big opportunity in this market that we're in, which, different terms for it, we call it the collaborative work management market. So basically, collaborative tools for working teams, for businesses. We see a huge opportunity for a big player from Europe. That market has a lot of big players in it. That they are all US based. They're all US companies, and they all have the US land on things, which means that, for example, things like data privacy and security aren't very high on the agenda. Something that we see a lot of clients don't like about the solution and love about our solution. That the fact that it's under EU law, GDPR, we take data security really seriously. We're hosted in Europe. No data ever goes out of here. The NSA can't access anything in our database. And yeah, so we therefore think Europe as a technological hub or source for great companies needs strengthening, and we want to be that player. We want to be the player that brings the suite of, again, with our product philosophies of simplicity, beautiful design, and data security onto it, and therefore have a suite of products that we will slowly grow, but to cover basically everything that a small, agile, data security aware company will need.
Yeah. And that's, I think you're sort of tapping into one of those, I guess, one of those trends, but it's not, I think one of the things I've always found quite easy when talking about MindMeister, for example, over many years is, especially if you go back some time and people had this sort of a bit more nervousness about cloud-based, browser-based solutions. And it always made life quite easy, although we're not trying to sell MindMeister, but if people asked us questions, it was always very easy to say it's all hosted, all the data, I think was Germany at the time, probably still is. And you're then able to say, you're not going to get any better in terms of data and privacy protection. And I do think that's kind of an interesting thing, in that, not that that's never been the case, but actually people's awareness of the importance of privacy on a consumer level, not just businesses, but actually I think with the Facebook scandals and all these kind of things over the last few years, I think people are starting to feel a little bit more sensitive about their personal data. So I think you're right. There is something to sort of almost be making a virtue out of, is the EU. Again, I sat here in the UK. Obviously, we think terribly of things about the EU apparently, but I think it's something to sort of make a virtue out of. Is this privacy thing? Because you guys have always taken it very, very seriously. Always put it, I think, right at the forefront of almost what you do. And I'm guessing that would over time be a bit of a not a USP as such, but a differentiator. Also compared with, and one of the big trends that's kind of on my radar is some of the Asia sort of products and market. You know, we see more and more mind mapping activity coming out of Asia, and I guess similar concerns exist. For example, if I'm in the US and I talk about any of the products out of Asia, there's a little bit of a sort of glazing over, because they know even if they wanted to use them, they might not be allowed to or able to because of these concerns. So in some ways, that sort of European strictness on privacy and data may sort of really play to your strengths, I guess.
Yes. Certainly, as we've seen that in the current customers and what they say about what they like about our products at the company, for sure. And yeah, Asia definitely a big trend, because we also see Japan is actually MindMeister, if I'm not mistaken, it's the second biggest market, I think. Wow. Actually. Yeah, so really definitely big trend. China is a different story. It's very, as you described, very closed market, closed to the outside and from the inside. So tricky one, but the rest of APAC definitely very cool for us.
Yeah, and for Biggerplate, one of two actually really big locations for website traffic. Again, not necessarily payments and revenue, but India, Indonesia, Malaysia, really high up on our India in particular, huge. I think it's overtaken the US now in terms of visits to Biggerplate. So there's real kind of momentum, and a lot of the companies I speak to, particularly those in North America, they talk a lot about Asia, and what they're really talking about is China, and I look at China as kind of one of the hardest ones to potentially get into. And also I think there's an underestimation of some of the local players in China as well. There's some really good mind mapping software companies in China, but yeah, it's the sort of the Asia trend, I think is going to continue, and it's not all about China. It's a bit broader and bigger than that. So that's certainly one that's on my radar.
So basically, on the second question, just to answer as well, the money basically we want to deploy mainly growth of the company, growth of people, marketing, sales, and engineering, building the products out, of course. And more colors of mug as well. I'm hoping a big part of it was mug budget. With the 5 colors of the star, on the other front, on the other trends, I mean, I don't want to bore anyone with the trends that everyone knows about, the AI trend, automation, robotics, the what else, VR, AR is one we always kept an eye on. I think it's probably now, we've talked about it for 10, 15 years. Now I think is the time when it really can grow into something substantially. And with companies like Apple are entering the market, it does mean that there is something there. It's going to give it a huge boost. We'll still see how it affects our products. We're trying out some things there. On the AI front, I think what I like there is this idea of this pervasive silent AI in the background. The fact that you'll just notice good AI features, you won't notice at all that they're there. You'll just notice that the product works just so much better and smoother for you and does things for you that are powered in the background by AI, but you don't consciously know you're doing it. Yeah, so that I think is the way to go there. We're also trying some things, some cool things like automatically finding out tasks, for example, of notes in Meister Note. Yeah, that's something that's going to be launching soon, that you can read the text and you see, okay, that looks like a task, and then in the UI you have a very subtle suggestion of create a task out of that. Yeah.
Right. So it might read your your outpouring of ideas and thoughts, and it might almost be suggesting to you that looks like a task. Do you want to turn it into a task?
Especially, for example, for meeting notes. Yeah, very good. If someone takes meeting notes, that's very, very useful then to kind of really turn that into something.
I imagine what you're going to base that on is that Windows 95 paperclip. Do you remember him? And
yes.
Yeah, I assume that's kind of how you're going for. Right. It looks like you're writing a letter. Do you want me to
jump a little bit on the side?
Yeah. Do you want me to really mess it up for you? I imagine that's the effect you're going to go for there.
We're going back into Muppets territory.
sorry. I'm showing my age. Yeah. The little paperclip. That's what I want to see in Meister Note next year. Okay. That's my feature request. All right.
Yeah. Message received.
Great. Well, on that very high-end note, I should probably let you get back to your real job, Michael. I think just from my side, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to continue to work with you and all the great folks. I've sort of probably worked with more Meister team members in this last year than ever before. So it's really exciting to kind of see all the different people and all the different ideas they bring. I think it's great to see MindMeister getting almost the uplift, the facelift that I didn't know it needed. That's kind of been quite exciting to see and go, hey, this is way cooler. So that's great. And then I'm really excited to play around more with Meister Note myself. That might help solve some of our kind of, as I say, fits and starts of knowledge management here. So that's great. And yeah, just to say, wish you all the very best for the new year. I hope it's a little bit less disrupted than the last 2 years that we've had, but and eventually I'll be able to get back to Vienna and we'll be able to go for that long-awaited beer as well. But thank you very, very much for all your work and for your time today talking with me. It's always a pleasure, and I feel we could go on for much longer, but we'd again start to look like those Muppet characters that we're trying to avoid.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll do that at the beer that you mentioned. And again, thanks very much. Really, really absolute pleasure chatting always, and it's great to be working with you, and hopefully soon in person again.
Lots more. All right, Michael. Thank you very much for it. Cheers.
Have a great Christmas and nice holidays. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.